Welcome to the NextGen GTM podcast. In this series, we talk with experts to uncover NextGen GTM tools and techniques that are driving measurable results for themselves and their clients. My name is Mike Bell, co-founder and CTO at Scheduler AI. My guest today is Josh Carter, Senior Director of Demand Generation at Pavilion. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. So, hey, we are all kids, right? And they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like a fireman, or a doctor, or whatever. And then we all end up in like tech and marketing. And so the first thing I always just like to ask is like, what was your journey to, getting into where you are today?
Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever said this out loud to,
Wait, really?
anybody. So I when I was in high school, I played in a pop punk band that was sort of like Blink-182-esque. It was a 3-piece, and we had to get people to come out to shows, and it was a grind to get people to come out to shows. You had to get a bunch of 15, 16, 17-year-olds to get out to the venue for a 7, 8, 9 p.m. show. And so you had to get really creative to try to convince people that it was going to be a really, really good time to come see your semi-average band go and play to a crowd size of 10. And I wanted that crowd size to not be 10. I wanted that crowd size to be 50 to 100. So when we started playing music and playing out, I mean, mind you, I was probably, 15 at the time, started to think about clever ways to get people to invite their friends to shows, and almost like referral plays now. And what that turned into is I ended up booking shows for other bands and doing some really fun promotional stuff to get people to come to other band shows, and then also, getting people to come to my shows. And I realized I'm not too bad at this. I can take a band that is, okay, and I'm not going to say we were amazing. We were okay. And I figured out a way to get people to get interested in the music and come out to shows. And I realized that's something I think I could be good at, that I want to pursue. And so at that point I was probably like 17, and I was like, you know what, this marketing thing could be the move. But I wanted to do music industry marketing. I wanted to do, all right, I enjoy booking shows. I enjoy getting people to come see my band and building an audience, building a brand. I want to do that for another band. I want to do that in the music industry. And of course, at the time, the music industry was in sort of just this crazy flux of the digital era, with iTunes singles and streaming coming into the forefront. So there was that kind of transition with the music industry where, we had the physical records that you would buy in the store, and then now everybody's streaming, and the industry was sort of figuring out what to do with it. And I ended up doing like my high school senior thesis on like the evolution of the music industry and recommendations on how the music industry should pivot. And in doing so, I realized, this industry just feels a little too risky. And, with all these streaming services coming out, and I just didn't feel good about trying to pursue that in like an academic setting, because there are a lot of programs, in college around music industry marketing. A few colleges offer it, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go broad, go just general marketing. And then I ended up, now doing what I always wanted to do, which is kind of crazy because, I went from being probably a 12, 13-year-old wanting to be a professional musician, tour the world, to, okay, let me be realistic. Maybe I could just market music, to then like, okay, maybe I could market something else. And so here we are, I'm in tech and landed here somehow, somewhere.
Two critical questions out of that. That's a great story. First, you didn't tell us, were you like a front man, or were you like guitarist?
I was a guitarist and singer. Yeah. Now I sit in the back. I play drums in a country cover band, and I just sit in the back and I just vibe. It's great.
You do that today?
Yeah, I do that today. Yeah.
Man,
I got to keep the brain sharp, man. I got to keep it sharp.
That's so good. And then I guess the other kind of natural question comes out of that is like, all right, so you've marketed, you've marketed music, you've marketed, B2B technology, you've marketed obviously for Pavilion as a community.
Yeah.
How different is it across industries, or is it all like truly like, hey, it's the same principles, just a different?
It's really funny you say that, because I was trying to distill down of like what marketing means to me. And I've distilled it down to the right message to the right person at the right time. Literally, that is the entirety of marketing. So if you can deliver the right message to the right people in the right place, I'll add that, at the right time, that is marketing 101, and we don't need to overcomplicate it. So everything that I do, whatever the industry is, whether it's, B2B tech, selling, getting people to join a community, which is what I do now, is run demand gen for Pavilion, where we're a private membership organization. So a lot of what I do is empower my team to get people into the community and get people set up for success. Whether it's that, or in my previous organization, we were a consumer financing company. I was working at a consumer financing company that offered financing. You walk into like Ashley Furniture and you want to finance your couch. And so, doing marketing to retail and getting them to offer our financing, and then doing the consumer side of that too. So, okay, like you're going to offer the financing, and then you're going to, we want to make sure your customers are aware of the brand and feel comfortable with financing through our company. And so there was sort of that B2B, B2C, and then now I'm in more of like B2C, B2B as well, being that we're a membership organization for professionals. So it's sort of like a hybrid. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to, are you delivering the right message to the right people at the right time in the right place? And I have always stuck by that. And everything that I do, I try to go back to the fundamentals. Now, the tactics are going to change. The channels are going to change. Where you promote is going to change, right? Like I right now with Pavilion, about 60-70% of our inbound comes through LinkedIn. So naturally, like we invest a lot on LinkedIn. We invest in organic. We invest in some paid, some thought leadership on LinkedIn. Whereas, when I was selling into retail, that was very much, how do I empower our field sales reps to visit the stores to get them to offer the financing, and how do you arm them with the things that they need to be successful? And how do you deliver that message to the right people in the right time, in the right place? So I think it kind of all boils down to that one kind of thought around, like, let's just go back to the fundamentals. The channels, the locations where you do the work is going to change, and maybe the technology you use. But at the end of the day, it's all getting somebody to do something that you want them to do.
No, that makes perfect. I mean, I love that. Message, person, time, channel. So then, what the heck is the difference between marketing and demand gen? I feel like we're throwing out. So we got GTM engineers, we've got like all these. So like, what's the difference? How do you classify it? Do you have different metrics than, say, like a traditional marketer? How do you distinguish the titles?
Yeah, that's where it gets really tricky, because I would argue I was always doing demand gen. Like in my first role as a marketer at a small startup in web analytics, and what I was doing was demand gen. I was getting people to come to the website and convert on a form, and doing that through a lot of different methods, and then enabling sales to be successful and sell them. And I would argue that like that in and of itself is like marketing's job. But what we've created is this concept of demand gen, which is, I guess, that like segment of marketing that's focused on how do you actually get a audience from getting them into your top of funnel, to getting them to your middle of funnel, to getting them all the way to your bottom of funnel. So I really think at this point we've broken marketing into two buckets. It's like brand marketing and demand marketing. I think that we can simplify it into these two buckets, because demand gen is responsible for all the motions that get somebody to become aware, to consider, and then to purchase. And then brand marketing is there as almost like air cover. And if you have air cover and you have the motions in place to convert people, then you've got a solid team. So I would argue like those are the kind of the two buckets. And the way I delineate the two is really like around the actual like communications, the motions, the GTM motions specifically, like to get people from top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, and then through conversion. So I mean, I consider those kind of like the two. And then of course you have like customer marketing and product marketing that kind of sit on their own. But when I think about acquisition specifically, I see like the two key levers here as like brand marketing, which I guess some people will put product marketing under brand marketing, and then you have the demand gen side. But really, as my role at demand gen is how do and you ask about metrics. I am so freaking focused on revenue and pipeline generation, radically focused on that. And the world has turned away from this view of we need to drive as many MQLs and SQLs as possible. Like, we're not doing that anymore. We're focused on, hey, are we generating pipeline that's converting? Because I've been in places where, and talked to companies where the marketing team is compensated on driving leads and driving inbounds, but they weren't compensated on the actual conversion of those. So I could run LinkedIn ads to a low value, low ASP segment of our ICP, and that converts maybe at 10%. And I might look back at it and be like, wow, look at our cost per lead. That was so good. Wow, let's pat ourselves on the back. And then you talk to sales and they're like, dude, like, these leads sucked. And so I'm a big fan, and this is why I really like at Pavilion. I have our membership sales team is under demand gen, and so it's really great because like we have this like continual feedback loop within our one department in the organization, and we're just radically focused on driving revenue. And of course, you have to you can't. And I've had this happen many times in the last few years of becoming almost too focused on revenue and too focused on bottom of funnel. You can't forget the top of funnel. So you really, as you are laser focused on revenue, you have to remember what got you there. And that's a really hard exercise that a lot of demand gen people are having a really hard time with right now. Like, just my peers are struggling with like, okay, I've been so focused on like this bottom of funnel conversion, middle of funnel, trying to get people just like to fill out, to get to that action, that we sometimes forget the importance of activating brand to just get people aware that when they are ready to buy, that they know exactly where they're going to go. So I think that's the danger of demand gen and being like too focused on revenue, is that you don't really consider what got you there and what gets, what's going to scale long term. And that's why it's really important to really just like be religious about breaking out your funnel and allocating your spend. If you're doing paid marketing, to make sure you're allocating, enough spend in your top of funnel and tracking that so that you're, setting yourself up for success in 6-12 months down the line.
And I think if I heard you there, right, and this is probably the tricky thing, is like that stuff once it's in funnel is easy to measure, right? Yeah. Versus like there's a lot that happens outside of the funnel, to your point. And I know Adam Robinson talks about this all the time, right? He's like, I don't have ROAS on my LinkedIn posting, right? I just know that I have general brand awareness, and over time we see like the ripple effects of that. Is that kind of what you're referring to there, or something maybe a little different?
Yeah. And that's the hard part though, is when you go to finance and leadership and you're saying, hey, like, I want to test this out. The natural inclination is for them to say, oh, well, like, what's the ROI? What can you forecast? And then in a month, tell us how much revenue you brought in for the business. And I think that's the danger too of setting yourself up in an organization as a demand gen marketer to be so focused on revenue and so focused on these plays that drive revenue that you end up like losing the buy-in to invest in brand. And I've seen this happen. And I've seen this happen with a lot of not when I say a lot, I mean 2 or 3 really high performing demand gen marketers that I know. Is they get into an organization, they see, and this happened to me here at Pavilion, they see, some inefficiencies in how we convert pipeline and how you nurture pipeline. And you laser focus on that. You generate results really quickly because you're implementing these plays that work and they're awesome. And you're converting pipeline, but you sort of lose sight of again, like what got you there. And as a result, you end up putting yourself in a position where, when you're like, okay, let's take a step back and try to invest in more like brand and try things out. You've got this, I guess, attitude across the organization that like, if you do X, you're going to generate Y, because like you mentioned, once it's in funnel, it's much more predictable. I know that this retargeting audience is going to convert at this %, and then that % of form fills is going to convert at this %. So it's really easy for me to just like calculate all this stuff bottom of funnel. But then when it's like, okay, well, how do I invest in for example, our founder, Sam Jacobs, he's got 115,000 or so followers on LinkedIn. You know, we're investing in content. He's investing in content on LinkedIn. Is that going to generate revenue immediately for the business? No, it's going to generate brand awareness, but we're going to invest in that channel because we know that that is a key first moment for people. And so the way I've gotten around this is the classic ask people how you heard about them in meetings and ask them in the forum when they convert. And then you can start to understand, and it's not perfect, and you're not going to be able to be like, this channel generated X, Y, and Z revenue. But what it's been helpful for me is, you know, we've got this podcast called Top Line, and we had a new member join yesterday, and he wrote that he heard about Pavilion through Top Line and an existing member. If we were to look at this with like the natural attribution, it would say that he came in through probably like LinkedIn organic or something, or direct. It was something like that. It's something that wasn't how he actually came in to the fold. I mean, it might have been the last touch attribution, but it was not what actually got him interested and got him aware of Pavilion. And so when I see that, and we talk about AI, it's because this podcast is focused on AI, and I'll do a little bit of an AI transition here. You know, I take the open text responses and I run it through a workflow, an AI workflow with Copy AI, and I basically synthesize the text and put it into these buckets and categories. So if somebody says top line, well, I can set rules to say if they say top line, that means podcast. So now I can start to, you know, have some indicators on the like content investments, the brand investments that we're making, and how that's impacting how people kind of get into our ecosystem. And that's been really helpful for me, at least going up to leadership, to show, hey, like this is how much, you know, we got from this initiative, from like we should do this over this type discussion versus like this generated $100,000 on the dot. No, it's just like, hey, we tried these 3 things like over the last 6 months. This thing had more members join as a result. We should invest more in this because those members had a higher LTV. You know, that's kind of like the way I look at it.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And to your point, when you kind of take that lens, right, it's less of a static that I hit, you know, a drop down box, and more of like you can start to look and see this was actually the result of number of channels coming together at once, right? Kind of your point at the beginning about, you know, did the message get to the right person, but like at the right time, right? In across all these channels, which is super cool. And you did start to kind of touch on something, right? So like, what is your demand gen stack you're using at Pavilion? You know, like what are the tools and processes and things where you're like, hey, this is absolutely killing for us right now? Maybe things you've tried that didn't work, or things that you're looking forward to trying. So we'd like to kind of know, like, hey, here's what we're using today. You know, here's what I'm excited about. Here's what does work. Here's what doesn't work. Just a little bit of that.
Sure. So today I primarily use, we're a HubSpot shop for all things marketing. Our member experience team uses Salesforce, and this is sort of like our source of truth is Salesforce, and then HubSpot is what our marketing and sales runs off of, essentially, whether that be like workflows, emails, sequences, all that stuff runs out of that. And then we'll use Copy AI, is an AI workflow tool that allows us to you use AI different ways. Like, for example, I've got that workflow that I mentioned that takes that open text response and categorizes it. So it can be like an operational tool for the team, as well as like a copy creation tool. So we've got a page on our website where you can, so about half, just for context, Pavilion's a professional community for B2B tech executives and directors and managers. And what we do is we help empower these GTM leaders at every stage of their career, and we have a lot of training. We have a really solid Slack group. We got channels or chapters in most major cities across the world, where we host events and do all this educational stuff. And we've got over 70 courses that we offer. And with respect to the courses, that is a really good way for a potential member to convince their employer to pay for the Pavilion membership with their learning and development budget, is by, say, hey, these courses are these courses are going to help me level up in my current role. Even though Pavilion's here for your whole career, will help you find that next role when you're ready. But with respect to, hey, like, how do we empower the prospect to advocate for themselves and then get their employer to foot the bill for the Pavilion membership? We have like a business case builder tool on our website where they put in their information, their LinkedIn profile, and they click submit, and that triggers a copy AI workflow that runs in the background that scrapes their LinkedIn, references the Pavilion features that are relevant to them that we store in the knowledge base and copy AI, and then it spits out a email template that they can copy paste that's incredibly personalized based upon their LinkedIn scrape. So if they're focused, for example, if they've made a post on LinkedIn about focusing on brand investments, it's going to recommend like a course that is more focused on brand, as like, because we're focused on this. It'll actually like call it out. So I've been a really big fan of using AI to empower the buyer in the journey, rather than using it for like the spray and pray of, let me just see if I can mass personalize 1 million messages and send them out. Because at the end of the day, that isn't working. The hit rate is like 0.2% or something. I read online. It was like the response rate was so bad. And so what I'm focused on is using AI to empower the buyer to make the decision, to make an educated decision and educate themselves. So that way, when they do talk to my sales team can be responsible for being a guide to them rather than, regurgitating everything that might be on the website.
100%. I mean, I know you and I have talked about this, right? Because that's a lot of even the approach we've taken at Scheduler, which is rather than using AI for that like pure outbound, right? You take that warm intent signal, you take what you know about them, and you start not a one-way sequence, to your point, which is where a lot of this goes, but you actually start a conversation, right? Because ultimately, whoever gets the conversation first tends to win, and conversations are what lead to close deals. I love the play that you're running there, though, where you're just like, like, let's take this one data point, let's enrich what we know about them here with here, right? And then use AI to take that very warm intent signal and kind of like push it over the line. I personally believe it's the future. It's part of why we've stayed out of, at least for today, pure cold outbound from our end. And I guess, that does kind of bring up an interesting point, which I always ask about in here is like, there's always stuff about what is dead, what is coming. Everybody's got an opinion on this, right, wrong, time will tell. What's dead and what's coming, in your opinion?
What's dead? Insert like baiting on LinkedIn thing right here, because I feel like that's just like the entire post format of all these influencers is like they'll start off with like cold outbound is dead. I don't think cold outbound is dead. So my hot take is like cold outbound is not dead. Relevant outbound is alive. And I've seen this firsthand. And what's great about Pavilion is we have over 10,000 members, and I can see the conversations they're having in Slack about all these things. People are having a really hard time with AI SDR activation. Like people are having a really hard time like taking AI and personalizing these messages for the sales team to spray and pray. It's not working. It's really not working. Where I'm seeing almost the maturity happen in this space is around the research. So I think where AI is heading is it's going to become like the source for all things research, and teams are going to be really focused on that use case. And by research, I mean like what I just mentioned, like scraping the LinkedIn profile, like surfacing insights, things that are now like commoditized at this point, because you've got tools like Clay, Apollo that are giving you all this information on the prospect. So it's like, in my opinion, it's all about, all right, the what's dead right now is this concept of spray and pray, outbound, scrape LinkedIn, say, oh, you went to Duke University? That's really cool. I live in Richmond, Virginia, which is 3 hours north of Duke. I went to Duke one time to go to a cross country meet. I don't know. Like it's like this weird, awkward like personalization that we've all received. That's just like, oh, this is so cringe. I think that's dead. It's not working at all. What I think is alive and what will be the future of AI as it relates to like the sales and marketing motion is empowering reps with information that's going to give them contextual firepower for their outbound. And so what I mean by that is I'll give you an example right now. You know, budgets are tightening across the board. I mean, let's be honest right now. Like with, we've got the state of the economy. People are. I've talked to a lot of members, and they're dealing with deals getting pushed back, and they're dealing with budgetary constraints, and maybe this will be a later this year thing, and right now we're just trying to hold on to cash, and we're feeling we're trying to figure out how we're going to address that in Pavilion, given about half our members pay for the membership out of pocket. And so we're thinking ahead of like, okay, and I think about my demand gen strategy. It's like, well, then do I change how I target? And so the way I'm leveraging AI in the future is around research. So what I'm doing is I built out a clay table that, and we talk about tools, I built out a clay table of basically every single possible account that could be in our TAM that could have a member associated to it, scrape the URL to look for job postings. If they are actively hiring, the company's probably doing well, or they're like, either they're backfilling a role or growing roles. So it's a good indicator. And in that job posting, do they talk about learning and development budget? And do they talk about, is there a term used that supports them potentially being able to afford a Pavilion member or pay for a Pavilion membership for their employees? And so then that frames, okay, so we know that this is the right audience. Now I can empower my team that, when we look at our warm leads in our CRM, like these are the ones you need to be focused on versus these, because contextually we understand like this audience is going to be more likely to convert, given we used AI to like understand like what's happening in the account. And there's so many use cases, not just in our use case with B2C, but like the B2B use case of just, taking your champions, scraping their LinkedIn, seeing what they're posting about, seeing, using an LLM to say, oh, well, like if they talked about cybersecurity, it's a specific security threat on some post or a comment, and you offer something that could be a solution for it, you can then empower your reps to say, hey, like this would be a really good way for you to start a conversation. Hey, like love what you said about this. Like, here's my perspective. I'm going to also engage with the post so you see me and your notifications, and then I'm going to follow up with an email. I think there's ways to use the research to be really effective. So I think the future is better research, and all teams are going to all be using these AI tools to do account research, to do prospect research, and it's going to be almost like a commoditized space. But then the personalization of the message is really the next step. Is like, how do you tee up reps to do that personalized outreach that doesn't feel awkward? And so what I'm testing right now is just like, instead of spray, pray, and personalize the message, rather, hey, here is a group of people, here is something that they have all in common. Let's make sure that when we reach out to them, that we're being relevant to them, and try it almost at a more manual level. And then if it becomes something that's scalable, we can feed our LLM with examples of positive responses, emails that were put in, and then almost like draft up an email for the rep to review, edit, and hit send. The human in the loop concept. So I'm like, all right, let's manually test a hypothesis. Let's then apply that hypothesis into a scalable AI framework, and then let's deploy it. I think that's going to be like the new framework moving forward about how teams start activating AI in different processes. I know that was a little long-winded, Mike, but like this is something I'm really passionate about, because I just see too many companies screw themselves over by spraying and praying, and then their prospects have a dirty taste of them in their mouth, because they're like, wow, this was an awful email for some random SDR that I don't even know if it's a real person.
I think what you've said has been consistent with a lot of what we've heard, right? And to your point, and I think we always ask ourselves this, like whether it's at Scheduler or whether we're doing like other consulting for companies, is just that like, what are the truly human elements, right, of this process versus what are the things that, to your point, right, like the research takes forever. Combing through data is not something people are good at, right? Like these LLMs do everything so well. And then how do you get it up to the point, right, where it's like you've set everyone up for success? Like, I mean, one of our big principles, right, is that, like, for instance, AI is never going to, well, I say never. In the foreseeable future, I don't see it closing deals, right? So like our job is to facilitate as quickly as possible getting you to the right person, right? But that idea that like, I'm going to come on, talk to an AI rep, have a conversation, and decide to buy. Even as somebody in AI, right? Like I'm not there yet on the vision. I think there's more to prove. And to your point, right? more data to gather in terms of like, hey, can we get people to 70%? Okay, now can we get them to 80? Now can we get them to 90, right? And like, how do we keep tightening that that last mile to the point where we can, start to trust it in certain scenarios? Because I agree with you. It is definitely a journey, and you want to walk up as close as you can to the line without, screwing everything up, especially screwing everything up at scale, right? Take the calculated risk, know the few you can mess up, but like, don't, to your point, go, burn your entire TAM down. That's
my gosh. You were so spot on. And the other thing that I wanted to mention around the personalization and the research is the importance of like relationship mapping too. And AI can really help you with that too. So if you're looking to try to get an intro into somebody, AI can actually help you identify, and I say AI like it's some broad term, but there's a lot of different tools out there that can, whether it be like Phantom Buster or whatever, that can help you understand, okay, this is the account I'm trying to penetrate. Here are where all the connections I have within the account, which again was something that reps did manually in Sales Navigator. Now you are just scaling this up. And I'm finding that that's another approach. Like when we talk about outbound and how to personalize outbound, is just using relationships and better empowering reps to leverage the relationships that they have. But again, I'm using the word relationships. You can't have a relationship with a freaking AI. Like this is a human thing. Like this human selling is never going to die. Like I am still going to make a purchase by talking to a human being, unless it's like a $20 a month tool, like Riverside or like, Opus Clips, like if it's some like product, that I'm just going to use online. But if I'm making a purchase and I'm making an enterprise software purchase or even a mid-market software purchase, like I have to talk to somebody. And I want to talk to somebody because everybody has their own use cases and they have their own experiences. And I think you have this level of comfortability when you talk to somebody who's an expert in the space. And so what I'm really excited about, and I've actually experienced in certain sales processes recently, is bringing on a more of like a subject matter expert earlier on in the sales process that can really speak in depth to the technical abilities of the product because of like how easy the research has gotten for everybody. So it's almost like you don't need to give me a demo of something that I literally can do online, or you use Novatic to do your demo on the website. I want to get into the weeds, like technically speaking, of like, how is this actually going to be implemented for my team? And I'm finding that certain companies have actually brought that in earlier in the sales process. And they've mentioned to me that it's actually working a lot better. And so with AI, we're able to, the prospect is more educated because they can do research with an LLM very quickly on what they need. They've identified you as a solution. Now it's like, is your first call going to be a SDR qualifying them, or are you going to use AI to qualify them using Scheduler and then push them into the flow, talking with somebody that's a subject matter expert and can appear to them versus being, just a regurgitator of some pitch deck that you have?
I mean, obviously you're preaching our gospel over here, right? Which is that like, let them have a short conversation to figure out what they really want, get them to the right person, and then let people be people. Because I don't think we'll ever lose that like soul connection. I've seen these things where it's like, apparently now you can record a podcast, right, with an AI avatar on the other side. I'm like, God, that sounds so soulless. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I can make content, but like, is it? And maybe it's even like good content, but is it? I don't know. I think we're starting to sharpen our perception of what, and I mean, you guys know this better than anybody at Pavilion, right? It's like people are craving that like human connection when it comes to things like that. Now, when we want answers, go give me the freaking, if the AI knows it, I just want to ask it and get my answer and move on with my day, right? But if it's deeper than that, if it's a connection thing, I mean, I think you guys are so well positioned for what's coming, in sales, which I think will be kind of this great divide. Could be totally wrong, right? Like I think we'll see like a real bifurcation there.
There is. Oh my gosh, that's so true. There is that bifurcation. We just, so one thing to note, we just released our compensation benchmarks. If you go on our website, you can go to resources and view them yourself. But the top 10% of basically, we looked at the top 10 percentile of earners year over year. The top 10% of that audience, I say audience, that segment increased compensation year over year. So the top 10 percentile. versus the median actually had a decrease in compensation year over year. So there is this bifurcation happening right now, even in like the performance as well. We're seeing like the people that are actually able to leverage the sales reps that are able to leverage the AI tools to do the research, to power themselves, that are becoming incredibly efficient. So the best of the best are getting even better, and then everyone else is going to be left behind. So I think we're going to hit this world where we just have to be incredibly lean, and we're going to have this like really lean. We're going to basically take the top performers from the rest, and the top performers are just going to scale what they've figured out as a top performing thing. So go to your point on bifurcation.
No, I mean, it's how technology tends to work at every major inflection point. Right, like the best will scale up significantly faster, and then those who are no longer in that field will probably find another potential line of work where these things are opening up where they can go back. But yeah, it's gonna cut. We could probably get pretty meta if we really wanted to into where all of that is going. But is there anything I didn't ask you so far where you're like, oh, Mike, you totally missed it, you should have asked me?
Oh, Mike, we should have talked about Outbound is dead and Outbound is alive and cold Outbound. No, I mean, this was a great discussion, man. And I know you. I mean, sure, you're telling me earlier, audience is marketing and sales leaders. I will say, and as somebody who's taken a look at what companies like what your company's doing, Scheduler, is like really, you don't have to buy the product, but look at the approach that they're taking and the approach that these companies are taking with the technology, and then work yourself backwards on your own process and think about how like you could potentially adopt what Mike from Scheduler is building, see how that could potentially fit into your process, and then work backwards into like what tools you might need. Because the AI, these AI tools that are out there today, like Scheduler AI, are on the forefront. They're talking to customers every single day. They're onto something. And so I highly recommend just like looking at the use cases and how that these AI tools are recommending that their buyers incorporate, because naturally they're going to encourage their buyers to adopt the use cases that are going to be the highest ROI and keep people around. So I just encourage marketers, we're in this like kind of era where there's so many tools out there. Just like take a look and just focus yourself on the use cases that these tools are solving for, and then see what use cases might apply to your business, and then work backwards into the tooling, whether that be using Scheduler, whether that you be trying to build something in-house. Like it can be really, really a good exercise for you, because it can get really noisy in the market. When you go on LinkedIn, you see a bunch of people saying, try this, try this, try this. What I like to do is just be like, okay, well, what is Scheduler recommending on their website for like key use cases to handle inbound leads? Okay, like this qualification use case, this like routing use case. Okay, like these are important components that I need to adopt in my strategy. So, anyways, I think that we like it is important to talk about like the fact that there are so many tools out there, and you've got to figure out like what's your stack going to look like. And this is something I've had a serious look at recently, and with respect to me, is like I get really like trigger happy a lot of times. Like I get really excited about new tools, but then you have to take a step back and be like, okay, wait, how do they actually all play together? And because there's so many tools out there that actually can give you multiple use cases, you just didn't know it. So like HubSpot being a perfect example, like there's so many things that HubSpot actually does natively that people are buying technology for. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Like you have this natively in HubSpot, but then there's this attitude that like HubSpot hasn't advanced at all in like these sequencing capabilities is one example. Like I've had no issue running HubSpot sequences. Like I'm getting good deliverability. I'm getting good reply rates. Like why do I need to reinvent the wheel and buy a separate tool to do sequencing? Like it's working just fine. And like if I need to personalize the message, I just put the personalization in a like a field, like a personalization field, and use an AI to fill that personalization field. And it's just like a sentence. So it's like, hey, first name, personalization, then whatever you want to say after that. Like there's ways that you can get creative without having to spend another 50 grand on another tool. So anyways, I don't say that to poo poo any tools. I think there's a use case for everything, but just take a look what you have, and because we got to be lean, we got to be efficient.
I mean, you nailed it, and I think there's a lot of those where, to your point, and we've seen this where, people have come over from competitors where they're like, there's a lot of things though that'll get you close, but not all the way there.
Yep.
And then you end up buying or doing something silly to fill the gap. And so to your point, taking that time to really sit down and not do it sloppy, not do it quick, but be like, can I actually get this to run the process all the way to the end? And, you know, sometimes even with our tool, if we're like, hey, you're still going to have a gap here. That's one of the things we want to be the most upfront about, right? Because they've got to understand, to their point, their total investment in the tool and the stack that they're going to have, right? And on the flip side, we've had folks come from us, you know, from generic tool builders. We're like, oh, well, they missed these 1 or 2 capabilities, right? Where it's like, we built it to close the gap. So I think, you know, you nailed it. And a lot of people, I mean, we love HubSpot too. We're a HubSpot shop as well.
Nice.
You know, to your point, they don't maybe push all the way in on the shiny. So I think that's great advice. I hope that everybody, you know, who's listened to this point really internalizes what you just said and takes a look in the mirror, puts an ugly Google slide or whatever up together with other tool stacks and takes 5 minutes to, you know, make sure they understand how it works.
I think the future of demand gen marketing is going to be increasingly more technical. And so we're going to be and there's all these new roles out there, right? It's like AI, ops, AI, blah, blah, blah. But like, regardless, like the level of technical expertise now needed in marketing is increasing like day to day to day to day. So just get yourself right set it. I know your marketing ops team or sales ops team may own these tools, but you need to get yourself educated on them and how they all speak to each other. Because you're the one evaluating these things and you're the one providing recommendations, and you should be nimble, be able to execute. So brush up on this technical skills, team.
That's awesome. We're probably getting a whole other discussion about GTM engineer and all that too. But hey, thank you so much for coming on this today. I think, you know, you just dropping one knowledge bomb after another. And I love just the beginning with like the music career, from the music career all the way to today. Guitar.
We'll put career in big giant quotations. You're listening to this, but my hands are just massive quotations.
Hey, you know what? Maybe you dive back in and you're promoting and all that stuff again. It'd be really cool to see.
You know, we'll take a few exits and then I can retire nice, right?
I love it. Move to Nashville. Get the dream going. So
there you go.
Awesome. Well, hey, Josh, thanks so much for joining. Hope that we get to see you next time on the other episodes of this podcast. And that's it for today. Thanks, everybody.